Welcome to the Connect with TrueSight webinar. During today's webinar, you're able to ask questions of our panelists. The questions, along with today's broadcast, will be published a week from today's date on our YouTube channel and communities. Now, for TSOM Patrol for Log Management KM, I'll turn it over to Sharon Thompson to take us through this content. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Greg. Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon, and I am a Staff Specialist Technical Support Analyst with BMC Software. I have been supporting BMC Patrol along with its KMs for a little over 13 years. Let's take a look at today's agenda. In this Connect with TrueSight webinar, we will be discussing the Patrol for Log Management KM. We'll go through an introduction to the product, its capabilities, and its best practices. During this webinar, we will also have a demonstration on how to configure a policy in order to use this KM, along with a few examples on customizing search strings and event messages. Additionally, we will also walk through the debug mechanism of the KM. This webinar will also take you through some of the most commonly asked questions on the log KM. And in conclusion, we will also list the references used to support all these topics. Before we go through any details of the log KM, it is imperative to understand what a monitoring solution or a knowledge module is. The knowledge module, or KM as we will refer to in this webinar, is basically a set of files or knowledge module lists that provides the patrol agent details of the host resources to be monitored. It is the KM that contains all the instructions that the patrol agent requires to carry out any monitoring. These KMs are deployed to the same server where the patrol agent resides. The log KM in particular contains all the directives for the patrol agent to monitor, analyze, and manage logs. Let's take a closer look at some of the capabilities of the log KM. As the name suggests, this KM is able to monitor and manage any set of logs from any supported environment. These logs could be currently existing files, yet to be created files, or files with dynamic names. This KM is able to monitor either a text or a script type of file. The log KM is proficient to monitor various aspects like the size of the log, its growth rate and age, the contents of the log and its state, numeric comparison, and also notify of any changes in the permissions or the timestamps of the log files being monitored. The log KM can generate alerts for many scenarios. However, here are a few examples listed for you. The log KM can generate an alert if a monitored log file is no longer present, or if a particular defined string is discovered in the log file, or in case a timestamp changes, or if the log file is inactive for a defined duration, or also if the number of matches meet a certain criteria over a period of polling cycles. When such conditions are matched, the log KM can also perform certain defined recovery actions. Another feature of the log KM is that it can search for multiple strings for a specified number of polling cycles. The log files located locally or remotely can be monitored using the log KM. However, please note that remote monitoring is currently possible only on Unix-based operating systems. Now let's take a look at configuring the log KM. Before you begin the configuration, please make sure you meet all the prerequisites that are listed under the System Requirements section of the user guide. The link to this document will be provided at the end of the webinar. So the most basic requirement of the log KM would be to make certain that the file to be monitored is accessible by the patrol user. The configuration of the KM will now be done on a TrueSight console, and hence it is a policy-based configuration. We will now go through a demonstration on how to configure a policy to monitor a log file using the log KM. As an example, I am using an old petrol agent log file in this policy and will be performing various tests on it. In the TrueSight console, go to Configuration and click on Infrastructure Policies and then click on Create Policy. Enter a unique name for the policy, set its precedence and enable the policy. In the agent selection criteria, enter the details as per your requirement. Now, click on Add Monitoring Configuration. In the monitoring solution, choose Log Management and Log Monitoring in the monitor profile and text files in the monitor type. Now, to add further configuration, click on this button. Enter a unique label name to identify the monitored environment. In this field, enter a logical name for the instance. This name is later used within the discovered monitoring file name and also within the events created while monitoring. Now this is an optional field. If left blank, the name of the log file will be used here instead. In this field, enter the complete path along with the file name to monitor. If the file name is dynamic, use the asterisk for a regular expression to define the file name. Now, if this path contains environment variables, only then choose this option. The file disposition. In this field, you have two options to choose from, latest and all. You could choose to monitor only the latest file or all files when multiple files match the log file name. This is applicable for dynamically named files, in which case you would choose the all option. In this example, we are monitoring a specific file and hence I'll choose the latest option. The data collection interval for local monitoring is the field to select the time interval in which the data would be collected. You can choose between 2, 10 or 30 minutes as per your requirement. Now, let's take a look at the advanced settings in this policy. In this option, you can generate an alarm in case the monitored file has not changed for more than the number of minutes you would mention in this field. Now, some log files, like the petrol agent error logs, are rotated once a specific size is reached. In that case, it creates a backup file and starts writing to a new and empty file. So if this is the case, you can mention the name of the rotated file in this field in order to scan the last entries which were left before rotating to the new file. Select this checkbox if the KM goes into an alarm or warning state because the search string is found, and you want the KM to return to an OK state if the search string is not found in the next scan. Now, let's take a look at the options available under the text settings. In this field, you can specify the number of lines that you want to be displayed when a match is found. For example, if you enter the number 2 in this field, the log match string parameter will display the matched line along with the next line. If you want the KM to read the log file from the beginning every time the file is modified, choose this option. If you do not choose this option, then you have the following options to choose from. For our demo, we will choose this option so that the file will be read from the last point it was read after every modification. The multi-line search option is useful if you want to search through a particular block of lines in the file. The start and end point of this block of lines should be entered in these fields. Using this option, you can specify the host name if you are performing a remote monitoring. As mentioned earlier, remote monitoring is available only for Unix-based operating systems. One of its prerequisites is that the Unix KM must be installed as well. Now we move on to the section where you can specify a search criteria. Select the regex type for the string you are about to specify. This selected type affects all the search criteria that you will specify. The petrol regex is the default value, which was also used in the older versions of the KM. The standard regex or the ECMA script is very similar to JavaScript regex, and it supports most of the regular expression syntax. Now, if an alert is generated as a result of a search criteria being matched, and the KM also finds the string that you enter in this field in the same polling cycle, then the KM can annul the existing alarm or warning. Now, before we enter the actual search string, keep in mind that this is called the global event handling section, which we will come back to later. Let's start with a simple search string in our first example. In this field, enter a unique name for the search criteria. In this field, enter the string you want the KM to search and generate an alert if found. Choose the not option if you want an alarm raised if this string is not found in the file. In our first example, let's search for the word history and generate an alert if found in the log file. Use this section to define a range of numbers found in your log file. Locate these lines by specifying the number of the first and second number fields. You can use the operator fields to select an operator that creates a wider range of the numbers that you want to specify. Use the begin token and end token to capture the words that you want to monitor in the log lines. In this section, you can choose how to customize your event. Do you remember the global event handling option we saw earlier? If you would like to override those settings and let this specific customization take precedence, then choose this option. Enter the minimum number of matches required to raise an alert in this section and the state in which you would like the KM to exhibit those matched entries. In my example, I choose 1 since I would like the KM to generate an alarm even if a match is found once. You can enter the message you want to be displayed in the events here. In a short while, we'll come back to this section with more examples. In this field, you can choose the time threshold for which duplicate events can be ignored. Click on OK. If you check this section, you will find that it is the same as the custom event handling section we just went through. Since I've chosen to override these settings, I will not enter anything here for now. Click on OK and save the policy. For this test, I have manually copied a line with the word history in it. Let's save this file and see what happens. Now, if I go to the device and check the monitor generated, I will see the value 3 for the log error level. And if I go into the text parameter to list the value, it will show me the line in which the word history was present. Before we go to the next topic, here are a couple of commonly asked questions to BMC support. Question number 1 is how to generate an event to check the availability of a file rather than read its contents. This can be easily achieved by setting a threshold for the log status parameter. These are the values that this parameter can display. The next commonly asked question is, can the log KM monitor a file on a shared location? The answer is yes. In the policy, in the log file, enter the full path of the shared location and the file will get monitored as any other file.
We will now look at using regex in search strings. A regular expression, or regex, is a sequence of characters that allows you to create patterns to help match, locate, or manage text. You can use regex patterns as per your requirement to build simple to complex search strings. Let's take a look at one such example now. Let's edit the policy that we just created and edit the search string criteria section. Now, by default, the search criteria has 3 possible combinations here. You can choose to search for a string like we did in our previous example, or you can choose an AND logical operator by using both the search strings, or you can choose the NOT condition in either of the search strings. Now let's take an example where I want to search for the word history and generate an alarm if found. However, if the line reads history file closed successfully or history repaired successfully, I don't want an alarm. But for any other string that has the word history in it, I would like to generate an alarm. So I will enter the word history in the first string, and in the second string I will enter a regex pattern that reads for both the strings history file closed successfully and history repaired successfully. Since I do not want an alarm to be generated for these strings, I select the NOT option and save the policy. Now, I manually add 4 lines to the file that we are monitoring. All the 4 lines have the word history in it. However, there are 2 lines which read history file closed successfully and history repaired successfully, for which I do not want an alarm to be raised. So let's save this file and see what happens. Now, if I go to the device, I see that an event was raised. And when I go to the monitor, I see that the log error level has raised an alarm. And if I check the parameter text last strings matched, you will see that it has returned the 2 lines history was not closed and history corrupted, but it did not return the 2 lines of history being closed successfully or history repaired successfully. This was a simple example of using regex in search strings. I hope it was easy to understand. You can build many more combinations of different complexities using this section. One of the most commonly asked questions is if we could include the logical operator AND within the search string. Here is how you could build a regex using AND. Now, let's take a look at how to customize event messages. If you take a look at the event that was generated, you will see that the message reads log error level for logmon webinar environment PN0 is in alarm current. Value is 3. So now we'll see how to customize this section. Let's go back to the policy and edit the search string criteria again. Let's let the conditions be the same. And if you scroll right down, you'll find the option for custom event message. Here, you have to use the person symbol to customize event message. For example, %1- returns the entire string. Let's save this policy and see what happens. I'm now going to update the file manually with the same lines as before. Let's save this file and see what happens. Now, if I go to the device, I will see that the events that are generated have the entire string in the message section. As you can see, history corrupted and history was not closed. Let's take a look at another example. Let's go back to the policy and edit the search string section. Here, instead of %-1, I will now enter error in file name. This would return the name of the file which we are monitoring. Let's save this policy and see what happens. Let me manually update the log file again and save it and see what happens in the TrueSight console. If I go back to the device and check the events that are generated, I will see that this time I get the message error in and the file path with the file name. This is how you can custom the event message that is generated. One of the most commonly asked questions relating to the custom event message is if macros can be used. The answer is most definitely yes. Like we saw in the example before, you can use macros like file name, search ID, app class, and many more, some of which are listed in our document. Now, we'll go through some basic troubleshooting of the log KM. We'll learn how to enable debug and read the log files generated thereof. To enable debug, you need to go back into the policy and create a new monitoring configuration. Click on Add Monitoring Configuration, choose Log Management, and this time in Monitor Type, choose Log Monitoring. Now, you'll find the option to enable the Reader Debug and the KM Debug. Let's enable both of them and see where the log files are generated. If I log on to the Petrol Agent server and go to the Petrol Home PMG directory, I will find that the Reader Debug is written here. And if I go into the Petrol 3 log directory, I will find that the KM Debug is written here. If you open the KM Debug, you will find that the KM Debug contains information of the entire log KM configuration details. And if you open the reader log file, you will see that this collects information on the PMG reader process. Let's go back to the policy and perform a small test. I am now going to edit the policy and enter the name of a file that doesn't exist in its location. let me change the existing file name and save the policy. Let's go to the server and see what information is written in the logs. Now, if I go to the reader log file and search for the file name ABC mentioned in the policy, you will see the error could not find the latest file in this path. Likewise, any errors relating to the file existence or permissions to access these files can be found in the reader log file. Additional troubleshooting information is very well documented in this mark section of our user guide. In the recent past, one of the most common issues that support has faced is search strings not working when it contains spaces. This is due to a defect with the KM, for which a hotfix is readily available at the link given, and this fix will also be included in the next release of the KM. Here are the resources used to facilitate this session today. We have a well-documented user guide and also a YouTube channel that has many how-to videos for the log KM and other BMC products too. I hope this webinar has been informative and resourceful to you. Before we end today's session, let's quickly go through all the topics we have covered. We started with an overview of the log KM and all its capabilities. We then went through a detailed demonstration of the policy configuration for the log KM. Next, we used a RegEx pattern in the search string and also saw its results. We also walked through a couple of examples on customizing event messages. We learned how to enable debug and also read the log files that are generated. And we also glanced through some of the common issues that support has faced during the session. Thank you very much for your time and patience. This concludes my presentation for today. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Sharon. And now I'll cover self-help and contacting BMC, the YouTube channel where this webinar will be posted, along with a rich set of how-to videos is available at this link. The Connect with TrueSight webinar schedule, where this webinar as well as other future and past webinars are advertised, is available at this link. And contacting technical support via web, phone, email, as well as these social channels are available. At this time, this will complete our webinar. Thank you,